Sometimes decisions in life aren't easy to make, and rather than being driven by morals or logic, they're driven by emotion and sheer necessity to survive. From time to time, everyone is forced to make a decision and I'm no different, that's being said doesn't mean I'm proud of what I did. In fact, I feel downright miserable about it, but there's nothing I can do for the change. In fact, this is the choice. I made it to get by. Not now. Now it's too late, and I'm too far in. I just graduated from college with a degree in business. I was completely broke, dirt poor, having paid my entire tuition during community college as I went along, breaking my back just to get the bills paid. So when I got out free of debt, I found myself stuck in a restaurant job with business degree and no idea where to go from there. My sister, Calliope, offered to let me stay with her. To most people, that probably would sound like a no-brainer decision. Why? They would ask. Didn't you think of that sooner? I did. I lived in Texas, and I lived in Vermont. I wasn't sure if I was ready to move so far from what I used to. Calliope did offer, though. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense to me. She agreed to pick me up so that we could have a little sisterly bonding time over the road trip. We're twins. I didn't really think a bonding time was necessary, but I was excited to spend the time with her again. A little over a year now, I packed up my belongings, climbed into my sister's car, and left Texas behind. I don't know what the future had in store for me then, but if I'd known what I would do now, I can't be sure if I'd ever do it again. Or not. Well, I guess it's either this or struggling in the service industry for God knows how long. For the start of the ride, she was very quiet. I found as if I did all the talking, even though nothing I said was of any importance. When I stopped talking, that's when I could feel the silence. It was heavy. "What's on your mind?" I asked her. For a moment she remained silent, staring at the road ahead of her. Her eyes looked at me like her mind was far away. Finally she answered me. "They never found him. And then they stopped looking. The trail's cold. It wasn't ever hot to begin with." She started to sound she was numb the whole ordeal by now. Calliope was a teen mom. At 16 she had her son, Calvin. I'd always admired her willpower. She didn't quit school, although trying to get through with her child was never easy. She knew college wasn't for her. I respected her for decisions she made for that child. 2 years prior, just a month after Calvin's 4th birthday, he'd been kidnapped. It was all over the news for about 2 months, and after no evidence was ever turned up, the commotion died down and the community seemed to forget. But my family never forgot. Certainly Penelope hadn't forgotten. She would never forget. The story was so big because of the mystery surrounding the entire situation. Calvin was playing outside in his own backyard, mind you, fenced in. He seemed to just vanish. There were no signs of forced entry, no signs of indication that anything was askew. He was just a missing child. I turned to her now. "Cal, listen, they didn't give up, and please, don't you dare give up hope. They'll find him." "No, they won't, Ashleigh. They'll never find him, and no one ever will." She cut me off. I stared at her, a bit taken aback by the outburst. "I know it's taking a while." "No! You don't understand. There was never a trail for them to follow. Absolutely nothing. I knew something that they didn't know. Not that they would believe me, but if I did open my mouth, I've known for a few months now." I stared at my sister, unsure how to react to what she was saying. She pointed to the back seat. "Read that. I brought it so you know too." I stared at her for a second before reaching back and picking a thick packet she'd prepared for me. Some pages were photocopied from books, others printed from the internet. I flipped through the pages, looking at her after getting a few pages in. Enough to understand what was happening. "You think Slenderman took Calvin?" She reached across and grabbed her packet. Flipping to the very back, she shoved it back at me. Staring at her, I took it back once more to know what I was holding. A series of drawings done by Calvin. According to the notebook at the bottom, she said sloppily, children's writing, Calvin. 4. The pictures weren't anything remarkable, even for what a child was capable of. But it wasn't the skill that it was interesting. All the pictures had one thing in common. A tall figure, and some that looked 8 extra arms jutting from its back. And in the pictures it was clad in a black suit. It never had a face, and it was always surrounded by trees. Except for the last one. In the last one, it was like a rough sketch of Calliope's backyard. I looked over at her again, waiting for an explanation. He's been drawing these in a few weeks before he went. I shook my head slowly. I didn't know what to say. I wanted more than anything to understand, but I felt more confused than I'd ever been. I need to do something. I need to. It sounded as though she wanted this to be more to herself than to me. Just as she said this, we pulled onto a fairly deserted road in West Virginia, and I noticed a sign that said, "Welcome to the Grassy Meadows." We drove in silence. Not even 5 minutes later, I felt a car come to a complete and abrupt stop. "Jesus," I said, looking around the alarm and annoyance. "What's the problem?" I asked my sister. "That," she said simply, staring out the window at my side. I looked and saw a good-sized building, in a decent shape, sitting beside me with a for sale sign in front of her, and one side, and on the other, a reader board sign that said simply, Grassy Meadows Motel. Before I could ask what was so miraculous about it, my sister was dialing the number for the for sale sign. I sighed heavily, waiting for her to end the call and explain to me what was going on. "We're buying that," she said. "Excuse me?" I had no idea what she was talking about. "I said we're buying that. You have a degree in business. We're going to put it to good use." "What are you talking about?" "It's hardly going to go to be put to use if there's nothing out here besides a post office that isn't even open anymore, and a few houses. Besides, this town is like 7 miles in its entirety. I didn't have the money, especially not enough to buy a motel," I said, voice raged in a pitch. "I have money. I sold my house." "You what? You spent what you saved up for college your entire life on that house?" I shouted, staring at her, but she put the car in park, climbing out waiting on the steps. "We just have to wait for Gary." "Gary? Who the hell's Gary?" I asked, exasperated, but seriously beginning to worry about my sister. I got out and walked quickly over to her. Before she could answer me, a car pulled up behind ours. A short, chubby man with mucky brown eyes and no hair wadded over us, shaking my fist, and first my hand, then my sister's. "I'm Gary." Which one did I speak on the phone with? He seemed overly excited, having an enthusiasm of a salesman on cocaine. "Me. I'm Calliope, and this is my sister Astra." "Wonderful! Such beautiful names. Can I interest you girls in a tour of the old place?" "That won't be necessary," my sister said. "We just want to buy the property." I stood back in disbelief as my sister and Gary closed the deal and felt numb when this blue Audi pulled away and drove into the distance. And all my sister said on the matter was, "You needed money anyway." That was a year ago tonight. I sat on the stool out front, a little radio in the corner playing some pop song I'm not familiar with, and I just stared out the window. My sister was making dinner. The sign out front said once, Grassy Meadows Hotel. Now just said, just like Family Hotel. And the words kid friendly underneath. I watched a small pickup truck pulls out into our drive, the engine loud and quite frankly sounding like it needed to be replaced. Turning the radio down, I watched as a man climbed out of the front seat, going around to the passenger side and knocking on the window. "Yo, Cal, we have company," I called my sister. A moment later, the kitchen door opened and she stood beside me peering out the window. "Did you see them?" she asked, rubbernecking to get a better look. "I saw a man get out and then someone's with him, but I don't know." I heard the front door open and looked down in his direction. Sure enough, the man walked carrying a little girl in his arms. The girl was awake, but clearly drowsy. No wonder it was roughly 10 at night, if I had to guess. "It's terribly late, and I'd like a room," the man said with a deep southern drawl. "Of course," my sister said, explaining the whole spiel about how you pay up front and by the day. $35 per? I was hardly paying attention to her, but watching the little girl who was looking around this room with sleepy eyes. She looked about 5, maybe 6, with brown hair and big blue eyes. My sister handed her the key over to the father, and as they walked over to find the room, I shot a glance over Penelope. I imagined the look on my face. It's the same as hers. Somber. "Is dinner ready yet?" I asked, gesturing my hands in the direction of the kitchen.